This is Raythe from Raythe Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 140, Dragon's Reign. We're here for the event of the century, maybe the millennium. After all, how often do two dragon shifters fall in love and get married? The blonde reporter burbled as her 1,000-watt smile lit up the space as much as the lights did. Maybe more. What are your thoughts, Ken, about this historic day? She was asking her co-host. The two of them were standing in the courtyard of High Reach. The gray stone castle looked imposing, even in full sunlight, but was softened by the thousands of fairy lights that surrounded every door and window of the castle. White and red roses were woven together and linked with glittery black velvet ribbon. There were huge, many-layered vases of flowers, so large it would have taken a dragon to lift them. I've always enjoyed weddings, Barbara, but I have to admit that there is something in the air today that's a little more. Ken, who resembled his doll counterpart, with the perfectly coiffed brown hair and broad, crust-white smile, said, "We've been given permission to go inside before the ceremony starts and show our audience everything, even some of the back of the house business. But I do wish we could somehow translate this feeling." I know exactly what you mean, Barbara beamed. It's almost like the air is fizzing like champagne. The excitement and admiration for the black and white dragon kings is just palpable. Maybe by taking our audience into the castle, we can give them a small taste of it. This way! The last was cried gaily to the camera operator, who followed Barbara in her icy white dress with shining sequins and pearls, and Ken in a black tuxedo with white cummerbund, as they clattered up the stairs into the main hallway. As they moved inside of the castle, they were surrounded by staff and guests. The staff were moving at a brisk, if controlled pace, almost in a dance, as they avoided the guests who already had glasses of champagne in one hand and a canapé in the other. Every room on the first floor is open to guests, Ken explained to the audience. The actual wedding will take place in the throne room, where after the ceremony is complete, both of our kings will take their thrones and begin their joint rule officially. But first, we're going to check in on the dressing area, where the dragon shifters are getting prepared. The camera followed them down the imposing arched hallways and rather baroque rooms with high bookcases, dark mahogany furniture, and leather sofas. Every fireplace was filled with logs, many already burning happily, crackling and popping as they were fed wood by a constant stream of staff. Elegantly dressed guests were seated in large leather and velvet sofas and chairs. "Oh, look there, it's President Goodfellow. Let's have a bit of a word with her now," Barbara enthused, leading them away from their dressing room destination. The President of the United States had on a long black dress with a flowing collar. A choker of white pearls and diamonds was around her neck. Every guest had taken to wearing some mixture of black and white to celebrate the two marrying dragons. She smiled warmly at Barbara and Ken. "Madam President," Barbara cried out, "do you have a moment to tell the audience your thoughts on this auspicious day?" The president nodded. "I cannot be happier. I remember the day that I met King Caden for the first time. I could tell then and there he was going to be a force for good in the world." "Is it true that you knew the identity of the white dragon shifter before the rest of us did, Madam President?" Ken asked with a wink. She let out a laugh. "I'll never tell, Ken, but I can say that things have certainly improved since King Caden has come on the scene. Our grumpy King Valerius is certainly a much happier dragon shifter," Barbara chuckled. "Indeed he is, and who wouldn't be when you find your true mate," President Goodfellow pointed out. "That aspect of the relationship has been much talked about. Our network has 2 movies in the works, as well as a miniseries," Ken enthused. "I do hear that King Valerius is not terribly pleased by the actor chosen to play him," Barbara gossiped in front of her audience of millions. "Well, he was offered the role himself, Both he and King Caden could have played themselves, but they ruled that out, Ken sighed. I cannot imagine King Valerius acting, Barbara admitted. Though he is handsome enough to be an actor, he is almost a little shy. Shy? President Goodfellow blurted out. Then, as if realizing that this was live, she quickly amended, he's definitely a very serious person, and acting would be too frivolous in his eyes, I'm sure. Ken and Barbara moved on from the President of the United States to several other members of state. The leaders of every country in the world had been invited to attend, and all had shown up. All of them wished the couple their best, but even if the reporters hadn't wanted to speak to all of them, the hallways and rooms were beginning to fill so heavily that it was hard to get through without running into someone important. Ah, there are Rose and Wally, King Caden's counselors. They are escorting around the winners from the below who won the right to be here among the powerful and important, Barbara said. Rose was already giving Barbara a narrow-eyed look as she approached, likely having heard Barbara's disparaging comments about the rather wide-eyed group of people that she and Wally were chaperoning. Rose, Wally, won't you say a few words about your thoughts on this glorious day? Ken thrust a microphone into Rose's face. In the past, Rose would have given him her infamous swarm shifter glare, but instead, she smoothed her expression out and gave a smile instead. She was dressed in a white sheath dress with a crystal bee necklace and stunning black and white makeup. Wally was in a white tuxedo with a black dyed rose pinned to his coat. His hair waved wildly above his head. I can't be happier for King Caden and King Valerius, Rose said easily. Both of them are so deserving of a happy ever after. I've always believed in true love, Wally rhapsodized as his hair moved. But seeing the kid and Valerius together just confirms that fate is real. Such lovely sentiments, and you all back there who were given the chance to attend this great event. What do you think? Barbara thrust the microphone towards the people from the below. The oldest woman in the group answered for everyone. How could we not be happy for such wonderful people to have found happiness with one another? We're so glad to be here to celebrate with them. So you believe that King Valerius is wonderful then? I know that many people in the below have No one in the below has anything but love and respect for Valerius, Ken, Marban said, stepping over. He was dressed in a black silk robe with white stitching at the collar and cuffs. His hair was firmly held back in a knot on the top of his head, and his facial hair was neatly trimmed. Marban, well, we now have 3 of the 4 counselors, Ken cried, looking a little wide-eyed. No, you have all 4, Shioni said, appearing behind Marban. She had on an off-the-shoulder black velvet dress with white silk underlay. Her long hair fell in shining waves over her shoulders and fell halfway down her back. She had a small smile on her lips, tinted a deep red. Her eyelids glittered with white and black makeup. I believe that you are supposed to be making your way to the dressing room where our dragon shifters are getting ready, Shioni said smoothly. I'm certain that your audience is far more interested in that than manufactured drama. Her smile was wide and welcoming, but the reporters cringed as the force of Shioni's personality overtook them. They knew that she would make them pay for bringing up such ugliness during the wedding. So like 2 lambs to the slaughter, they allowed her to lead them past Captain Simi and Ngoye, who were guarding a hallway that led to the dressing room. Shioni reached the double doors and knocked discreetly. One door was pulled open, and Anwar's handsome face was revealed. She whispered something to him, and he nodded. The doors fully swung open, and the camera was blinded for a moment by sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Slowly, the image unfolded before the camera. 2 silhouettes appeared before them, one taller than the other, but both strong and broad, wearing long coats, tight pants, and knee-high boots, and also both bearing crowns upon their heads. The crowns seemed to glow for a moment, as if they held an inner light. King Valerius, King Caden, Barbara whispered in awe as their handsome features were revealed. By the spirits, don't you look like the kings you are? And they did. Anyone who had seen the broadcast that day would always speak of that moment when the 2 dragon kings appeared before them like the ancient rulers in stories. The magic of shifters was reignited once more that day in many hearts and minds. Both dragon shifters seemed to sparkle and shimmer. It was as if one could see the 2 great dragon spirits inside of them, even in their human forms. I thought you weren't supposed to see each other before the walking down the aisle part, Ken finally sputtered out after the awed silence had gone on too long. Caden laced the fingers of his nearest hand with Valerius's. Nothing can keep us apart, especially a silly tradition like that. Well, we saw you would not be kept apart last night, Alarion said as the great green dragon king sidled over, looking stunning in his finery and crown as well. The helix, Kayla laughed as she danced over, her smile as bold as her pantsuit. Everyone saw it, like everyone. Do you suppose it will glow like that every time each of us has sex? Tez asked as he wandered over with a glass of wine in one hand and a cheese toast in the other. If it does, my color shall be glowing more than any of yours, Esme teased as she bussed Caden and Valerius' cheeks. You teased that man in the conga line last night endlessly, Jahara remarked with a shake of her head. You do realize if the helix does not glow when we get it on, that there will be endless bets over who will win, May pointed out, looking stunning in her red dress. Anwar walked over in hand with Fidel, a man who the press had been agog over since he'd awoken from a seemingly unbreakable coma. Bets about what? Sex, dragons, which of us will win? Alarion explained as he drained a glass of champagne. Ah, well, Fidel, I think we must give Caden and Valerius a run for their money, Anwar said, and then kissed Fidel on the lips. Fidel grinned. I do not know. Last night's show was one for the record books. The helix does light up every time we have sex, Caden insisted, cheeks flaring red. Believe me, if it did, it would be blaring every day, twice a day or more. Young love, Esme smiled. You do all realize that this is not just being filmed, but that we're live, don't you? Valerius remarked dryly with a nod towards the camera operator, who is desperately trying to catch everything. The reporters have been awfully quiet too, not wanting to remind the dragon shifters of just that fact. All the dragon shifters looked over at the camera with the red light on top of it. Caden buried his face in Valerius' chest. He patted his beloved's back. May sighed and looked bored. If they haven't already guessed, we all have sex. Kayla waved at all the people. Hi, everybody. I have sex. Lots of sex, but not this trip. What about you, Tez? Tez pinked, especially when Kayla threw her arm around his shoulders and urged him to wave and tell the audience all about his sex life. Despite Eldron being the most beautiful, we are still shy at getting our picture taken, Tez explained, and we never kiss and tell. Well, the helix sort of tells for us, Kayla reminded him. Oh dear, Tez wailed. Esme looked completely unrepentant. I think it is a good thing for people to realize that sex and love does not stop when you start getting wrinkles. Jahara chuckled and nodded. Love in all its myriad forms is a wonder, and I am happy to see it. Alarion cleared his throat and stepped directly in front of the camera. I am looking for my true mate. If you think you'd be a good match, send me a photograph and your details to... No, Alarion. That is not how this works, Esme cut him off. What? Voss needs to see a selection of beautiful women to choose from, Alarion cried, and I am interested in... Vosith is totally not going to choose a buxom blonde with no thoughts in her head, Alarion. Tilly sighed as she came over looking both gorgeous and an airy concoction of white and silver, and she wasn't alone. Vanya and Visky were following at her heels, one with a black bow and one with a white one around their necks. She patted their heads, and they looked at her adoringly. You are a little girl, Alarion scowled at her. And, Tilly challenged with one eyebrow lifted. You know nothing about these things, Alarion insisted. Tilly poked the center of his chest. I know that fate has something else in store for you. Like what? Alarion regarded her with suspicion and slight alarm. Oh, that's for me to know and you to find out. Tilly gave him an arch smile and went over to Caden to get a hug. Wait. If you know something, you must tell me. I cannot be left in the dark like this, Tilly. Alarion insisted. You must tell me. You cannot tease me like this. She only stepped in front of the camera, blocking their view of Alarion chasing Tilly around Caden and Valerius as he demanded to know what his fate would be. Tilly, laughing, and ran off with the dogs, with Alarion at her heels. I think you should go get set up in the throne room for the ceremony. Don't you? Shoni asked. Yes, I think so. Caden grinned as he watched his sister tease Alarion relentlessly, It was far better than him asking for supermodels to email him their details, just in case Vows took a liking to any of them. Does Tilly really know something, do you think? Fidel asked. I think my sister knows that the last thing Alarion needs in his life is someone without a thought in their head, Caden admitted. He needs someone to be strong where he is weak. So he needs the strongest person in existence, May asked. Ted snorted. Such a person doesn't exist, unless they are some Russian grandmother who could hit him over the head with her purse. Or a young male scholar whose very vocabulary would leave Alarion blinking, Esme suggested. Guys, you have to admit that Alarion has really turned things around. Caden defended the green dragon shifter. He has, Valerius agreed and kissed Caden's temple. You are a great reason behind that, Caden, he said. I'm hardly alone. Your regard and the desire to keep in your good graces keep Alarion on the straight and narrow these days, Caden said. Anwar gazed upon Fidel. I owe him my life. But that does mean I want what's best for him. I hope whoever Vows chooses will have those qualities to lead him always towards the goodness within him. He has come far, Jahara agreed. Positive reinforcement is a very good tool with him. That's why Vows will never choose a supermodel, May muttered. Whoever it is must surprise him and keep him on his toes. What about your mate, May? What do you hope they'll be like? Caden asked. Oh, someone who can make me laugh, May said with a slow smile. Someone who can remind me of the good in the world. She cupped Caden's face. Someone like you, I think. But we shall see if I am so lucky. I'm sure you'll get someone much better than me, Caden said, but blushed all the same, as the Red Dragon Queen May did not say things so lightly. Everyone, it is time, Anwar clapped his hands above his head to get everyone's attention. Caden's heart raced. He looked up into Valerius' face. It was foolish to be nervous or scared. Getting married to Valerius was absolutely what he wanted to do. They were already fully bonded. Today was just for the big party. Valerius rubbed his thumb over the back of their joined hands. Caden rested his cheek against Valerius' shoulder. Even with the crown on, it was still comfortable to do it. In fact, the crown seemed to weigh nothing at all, even less than when he'd first put it on. Everyone, line up, Anwar said with a snap of his fingers. The dragon shifters finished their last sips of champagne and wine before they formed a line. Kayla was first, followed by Tez, then Anwar, Jahara, May, Esme, and Alarion. Valerius would walk up the aisle after Alarion. The dragon shifters would array themselves evenly on either side of Caden and Valerius' sides of the throne room. His parents and Tilly hurried over. His mother was dressed in white silk with a stunning black velvet wrap over her shoulders. His father wore a white tuxedo with black cummerbund. His mother kissed him and Valerius. His father hugged them both. Tilly rocked back and forth on her heels as she gazed happily upon both of them. I'm so nervous and I don't know why. This is the absolute perfect day, and I'm so thrilled for both of you, his mother said. I'm so proud of you, Caden, his father said as he squeezed him tight. He drew back and there were tears in his eyes. You're a dragon king that we can all believe in. Valerius made a small sound, which had his father looking over at the Black Dragon King. Caden could still remember his father's distrust of Valerius, though it had disappeared after the behemoth incident, or so Caden hoped. But now his father was looking at Valerius with narrowed eyes. But then his father grasped Valerius' hands in his and shook them warmly. I am trusting you with a piece of my wife and my heart, King Valerius, one of the two greatest treasures. I don't think I have to tell you to live up to the trust, his father said. You do not. I am honored, and I will always keep you and your wife's trust, Valerius promised solemnly. His father then gave the Black Dragon King a big hug, which surprised Valerius, who hesitated before hugging his father back, with a rather touched expression on his face. The doors were already opening, and the people were starting to filter out towards the throne room, where they would walk up the aisle. Tilly, though, came up to both of them, wrapping her arms around him and Valerius. Caden noticed that she had her dagger at her waist that Valerius had given her. I love you both, Tilly told them through happy tears. And I can't think of anything better than the two of you getting married. Have the best day, the best life. Oh, Tilly, we love you too, and you will be part of that life, Caden assured her, hugging her back tightly. A big part, Valerius added as he kissed Tilly's head. I've got to stop crying or my makeup will run, and there are like a bazillion cameras out there. Tilly said as she pulled back and carefully dabbed her eyes. How do I look? Not like a raccoon. You're good, Caden told her. You look beautiful, Tilly, Valerius said. Thank you, King Valerius. Caden, you're an idiot. Tilly stuck her tongue out at him, but he'd made her laugh, so that was the best part. She turned and raced after the line of people leaving the room. Valerius and Caden stood there for long moments. Are you nervous? Valerius asked. I really hope I remember my vows. I practiced them, but I'm not sure I'll remember, Caden confessed. Valerius cupped his face. I already know them, as you know mine. So if I freeze like a deer in headlights, you know to just kiss me, right? Save us both? Caden laughed anxiously. Absolutely, just as you have saved me every day. Valerius kissed him then. Caden's eyes closed and he leaned into the kiss. Inside his mind, he saw Raziel and Iolaire. The two dragon spirits were wide awake and staring at everything with rapt attention. Raziel leaned down and nosed the side of Iolaire's snout. They turned to each other and pressed their foreheads together in a dragon kiss. Valerius, Caden, we cannot do this without you, Shoni called from the doorway. We're coming, Valerius said as they broke apart. They walked down the hallway together, hand in hand, but they had to separate as Valerius would be walking ahead of him. Caden was the last person in line. His eyes tracked the Black Dragon King until Valerius vanished at the doors of the throne room. Flashes from cameras were going off repeatedly, and Caden was half blinded as he kept an eye on his parents' backs. He tried to remember his vows, but they slipped through his mind like grains of sand through an hourglass. All I need to tell him is that I love him and will forever. That's it. Just hold on to that, Caden told himself. He was just outside of the open doors of the throne room. Pews, rather like one would see in a church, had been set up on either side of the throne room before the dais. Cameras lined the outer edges of the pews, packed so tightly together that Caden could hardly see the mirror behind them on the right-hand side, or the doors out into the courtyard to the left. He could see past his parents, all the dragon shifters walking up the aisle, looking glorious and noble and ethereal. Even Ilarion appeared sober and full of great age and wisdom. In the mirror, he caught glimpses of their dragon spirits, who joined Iolaire and Raziel to watch their nuptials. He was pleased and surprised to see how Zippel cuddled against Iolaire. Mephis sat comfortably against Raziel. Lana and Alderon, of course, were a matched pair. Evren and Zephyra were like the wise older parents looking over their flock. Cade nearly laughed as he caught sight of Vosseth, too. She was the entrance to the lair. Raziel and Iolaire inclined their heads to welcome her. And it wasn't just her. All of the dragons that had saved them from the behemoth came inside to watch. The banana yellow one definitely did have its eyes on Lana. He was so enamored of what he was seeing in the mirror, he nearly missed it when it was Valerius' turn to walk up the aisle. The flashes became utterly blinding again, so that Caden saw Valerius' forward movement and stuttering images, yet every one of them was burned into his mind. His sister, smiling and graceful, advanced up the aisle next. She scattered red and white rose petals before her out of a basket. Caden saw that Wally, Rose, and Landry were all sitting on his side of the aisle and were beaming at her. Wally was recording it all on his phone. He stood up and called Tilly's name to get her to smile for the camera. Caden chuckled and shook his head, as if the entire world wasn't recording every second of this day. It was his parents' turn to walk down the aisle together. They gazed back at him for long moments with smiles on their faces and tears in their eyes. Then, hands clasped, they walked up the aisle together as the camera rolled and flashed. With every step they took, Caden grew more anxious. Would he manage to walk up the aisle without tripping over his own 2 feet? Would he be able to walk at all? He could totally see himself freezing. If I do, Valerius will come get me and carry me down the aisle. He's there for me, always and forever. He met Valerius' eyes where he stood at the end of the aisle beside Ilarion. Just as St. John stood on the dais as he was going to marry them, he gave Caden a brief nod when it was time to walk. I love you, Caden. Come to me, Valerius said. Caden kept his eyes on Valerius as he put one foot in front of the other and somehow managed not to trip or freeze or fall flat in his face. He made it to the end of the aisle and Valerius stepped out so that they were facing one another. They naturally reached for one another and took each other's hands. Just as St. John gave them a broad smile. Everyone, we are gathered here today to join the Black Dragon King Valerius and the White Dragon King Caden, together in holy matrimony. I have officiated at many weddings, but none that has given me such pleasure." Caden saw only Valerius's face, his own hurt from smiling so broadly. Marriage is a sacred compact under the laws of humans and spirits. It is not to be entered into lightly, and in this case, it brings two great leaders of the world together to rule as one, Justice St. John said. "Both of you have already faced great challenges together and led us all out of darkness and into the light," Justice St. John continued. "I have no doubt that each of you will guide yourselves and each other with great wisdom in the future, and your union shall be a shining example to all of service, duty, loyalty, and love. My understanding is that you have your own vows, yes?" Caden's mouth went dry. He should have brought a set of cards with the vows written on them. He should have written the vows on his inner arms or something. How crazy was he to think he could remember something now when he was gazing into Valerius's beloved face? But he was tearing up, so he wouldn't have been able to read the cards anyways. "King Valerius, would you like to go first?" Justice St. John asked when no one said anything. "Yes, thank you," Valerius said softly. "Was I supposed to go first? I can't remember," Caden babbled across their bond. But then Valerius's mind touched his and calmness fell. "Everything is going exactly as it should. Caden, I once spurned love. I thought that true love was what happened in a badly written story. It did not exist," Valerius said. There were chuckles around, even Caden laughed. "Or if it did, I was not worthy of it," Valerius continued, which elicited soft awes. "But then we met, in battle no less, which is fitting, as everything that has ever mattered in my life has been connected to a fight." More laughter. Caden felt tears running down his face. "You represented change to Raziel and I. We didn't know we wanted it, but then we realized that we couldn't live without it, without you and Iolair," Valerius told him. Caden let out a watery gasp and nodded. "You too. You and Raziel both." "Raziel and I pledge with all we are, with all we could ever be, to love you and care for you for all the days of our eternal lives," Valerius told him. A glance at the mirror would have shown that Iolair and Raziel were gazing at each other with the exact same expression as their human counterparts. "King Caden, you have vows as well that you wish to say," Justice St. John urged. Caden got out, which had everyone laughing as he attempted to clear his throat and wipe away tears at the same time. "I love you, Valerius." Valerius smiled and tears streamed. "Iolair and I have loved you and Raziel almost from the very start," Caden said. "I was so scared of my life changing. Iolair would have let me hide and pretend that nothing was different. But you made me want to be the 9th dragon shifter. You helped me believe that I could be." "Always. You were the best of us," Valerius sent over their bond. Caden tightened his hands on Valerius's. "Iolair and I pledge to love you and care for you all the days of our eternal lives." Caden caught sight of his parents crying. Tilly was now looking like a raccoon and proud of it. Landry was gripping Rose's hand so tightly that she was likely cutting off Rose's circulation. But Rose didn't seem to mind, as she was beaming at him like the sun, while he was weeping openly and filming. "Who has the rings?" Justice St. John asked. Alarion and May came up on either side of them. Both of them had velvet ring boxes. The one Alarion carried was white, while the one May had was black. Both he and Valerius took the boxes from their fellow dragon shifters. They nearly opened them at the same time. Caden gasped. Valerius let out a low sound of appreciation too. Valerius's band was gold, while Caden's appeared silver or more likely platinum. But while they at first appeared smooth and unmarked, as Caden gazed within them, an image swam to the surface. It was of 2 dragons, Raziel and Iolair, who rested their foreheads together. "May, this is beautiful. How did you even do this?" Caden asked. May smiled. "Magic." Valerius chuckled. "I half believe you, May." "You should. Because it's true. Like the crowns, we just knew how to make them, she said. I have to admit that she even impressed me, Valerian chortled. May rolled her eyes. Then the two of them retreated, leaving Caden and Valerius alone before Justice St. John. Caden held the ring for Valerius, while Valerius did the same for him. Caden wasn't nervous any longer. He felt sure and certain. Do you, King Valerius, take King Caden as your husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish forever? Justice St. John asked. I do, Valerius said. Caden slid the ring on his right ring finger. And do you, King Caden, take King Valerius as your husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish forever? Justice St. John asked. I do, Caden whispered. Valerius slipped the ring on Caden's right ring finger. He saw the dragons inside of their rings surface and kiss. In the mirror, Raziel and Iolaire did the same. I now pronounce you husband and husband, partners and kings for life, Justice St. John announced. You may now kiss. The whole throne room erupted as he and Valerius kissed until they needed air to breathe and then kissed some more. Caden knew that the helix was blazing in the sky above them. Flower petals were thrown as he and Valerius turned back towards the crowd and lifted their joined hands together into the air. The other dragon shifters surged around them. They linked hands with each other and with Caden and Valerius. The 9 of them stood there, joined. It was a new era, and whatever came, they would face it together. I love you, Valerius. I love you, Caden. They kissed again, long and deep, and Caden knew it was forever. Later that night, when the moon was full and the stars were bright, all the dragon shifters went out onto the courtyard together. They took off those lovely clothes that Anwar had taken such great care to make and placed their crowns on top of them. Then they shifted one by one and lifted off into the air. For the first time since the war, all of the dragons flew together over the earth, all 9 of them this time, and instead of fear, people felt awe and happiness and safety. These were their great protectors, and all of them thought, let the dragons always reign. Thank you for coming with me on this wonderful journey. I hope you enjoyed this story and that it and the characters will stay with you like they stay with me. Thank you.